Sean will introduce today's panel, and then Serena and Sharonette will be helping monitor and take care of the chat box and Q&A functions. So thank you all, and Sean, I turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Again, my name is Sean Roy. I am with the Youth Employment Solutions Center as a state liaison, working primarily with Kentucky and Massachusetts. I am also the Chief Innovation and Training Officer with TransCen Incorporated. And so we'd really want to thank you for coming and welcoming you to this monthly webinar. This one titled Creative Options for Using Virtual Training to Spur Career Development. Our plan in our final few months is to have webinars every single month on topics related to improving employment opportunities for youth with significant disabilities on state levels and national levels and local levels. So next month, we are going to be taking a look at strategies for collaborating in a virtual world between education and vocational rehabilitation. And in April, we're going to take a look at strategies to engage employers in pre-employment transition type of activities. And then we will also have May, June, and July another webinar series, which is yet to be announced. So again, thank you for having us. Also encourage you to visit the Yes Center website, which can be found at www.tash.org. We have employment success stories. We have archived podcasts. We have printed materials from the states that we're working with that are very, very helpful. So a lot of great stuff on the Yes Center website. We encourage you to take a look at that. As Michael said, I'll be co-moderating this session. Serena is going to be helping out as well. As I have to jump off at the top of the hour, please enter any questions that you may have, either in the chat box or in the questions and answers box. And again, thank you. You know, this is really important as we take a look at our changing world and as we take a look at the continued need to support our students with significant disabilities towards careers. We need to find creative ways to continue to connect them to exploration activities and to work experiences, opportunities to practice the things that they want to do or the things that they may be interested in. And in some areas, possibly the pandemic has put a stop to a lot of those things. And really, I think what we want to encourage is that, one, things are getting better. Maybe not getting back to normal, but we continue to need to stress and put a focus on connecting kids to those types of experiences because we know that really leads to improved adult employment. That's why this is so important. So we're just thrilled that everybody is here, and we're absolutely thrilled at our group of presenters today. We have 3 subject matter experts that are going to come at this issue from 3 different places, and then we are going to have a question and answer after the session. So let me do an introduction of our panel, and then I will hand it over. The first person you're going to hear from is Dr. Laura Owens, CESP, who has over 30 years of experience as a national leader in the transition and disability employment field. She is currently the president of TransCen Incorporated, an organization based in Rockville, Maryland, that provides employment and meaningful day services to individuals with disabilities in California, Wisconsin, and Maryland, and provides training and technical assistance to organizations and school districts focusing on the improvement of education and employment outcomes for individuals with disabilities. She is also a professor in the Department of Teaching and Learning at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Her areas of interest and work include competitive integrated employment, community inclusion, and self-directed IEP transition planning. She has also utilized community conversations to successfully bring communities together around transition and integrated employment. She recently co-authored the book, Planning the Transition to Employment with Doctors Wendy and Richard Parent Johnson. And it occurred to me that I did not describe myself, and for that I apologize. I am an adult male with salt and pepper hair. And I'm wearing a dark colored sweater. I'm sitting in my basement with red and white walls. So that is me. Apologize for not doing that before. Second speaker today is going to be Sherry Beamer, who is the director of the Community Employment Network at SEEC in Silver Spring, Maryland. Sherry oversees the program directors of employment services, project search, and community engagement to assure that SEEC participants are realizing their employment goals. Sherry has worked to support people with disabilities to lead quality, empowered lives for over 30 years in a variety of direct service, case management, and leadership positions around the country. A few of the organizations Sherry worked for are the California Regional Centers, Relias Learning, and Easter Seals. Sherry also established and led for 15 years a consulting company for transformational organizational change for disability agencies. Sherry has been an active member of APSE, which is the Association for Persons Supporting Employment First, for over a decade. And finally, Brianna Schultz is the Internship and Employment Coordinator at the Tayshoff Center for Inclusive Higher Education, Inclusive U, which brings students with intellectual and developmental disabilities to Syracuse University for a fully inclusive college experience. Brianna established the Inclusive U internship program in 2015, which includes student internships and work experiences on campus, as well as employment preparation in the classroom and on the work site. She has worked to create a student-centered approach to individualize the student's experience and goals, and continues to use innovative approaches when assisting students in identifying their career plan and successfully obtaining employment. Brianna has worked alongside the Syracuse University campus and community to assist in placing students after graduation, achieving a 100% placement rate after the 2019 academic year. She also leads the National Employment Affinity Group for the Think College organization to assist in forming best practices in the field. Brianna holds degrees in biology and a master in education from Lemoyne College, and has received her Master's of Public Administration from Syracuse University. So that is an impressive panel of speakers you're going to hear from today. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Laura Owens. Laura, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. It is a pleasure to be here. I am a white woman with long blonde hair and a gray sweater and glasses. And my background is an image of sunflowers because it's my happy flower. And it was a painting done by Nair Shahid, which is an artist with a disability who was spotlighted in Intelligent Lives. So I'd like to put a plug in for him. So I get to start this illustrious panel with a discussion about what we've been doing and what we've been working on throughout the country. So moving on to slide 6. So we are living in a time of COVID. I think we will continue to live in a time of COVID. And so we have to understand that disruption is really an opportunity to make change. I believe strongly that this is our opportunity to kind of re-envision and re-energize ourselves into doing something new and innovative and creative. Rather than sitting back on the status quo wheel, so to speak. The image on this slide is a circle that says challenge, change, shake up, and disrupt with a red arrow pointing to disrupt, because I think this is our time of disruption. Slide 7, please. So when we talk about virtual, when we talk about disruption, when we talk about changing things, for us, it's really about getting people connected. So what we've been working really hard at for the last year is to work with families, caregivers, and individuals with disabilities to identify kind of in-home IT buddies, because a lot of the individuals that we're working with either live in group homes, they might live in independent living centers, they might live independently but not have a lot of access. And so working a lot to get people connected, to find ways to get the technology that individuals may not have. And so we are not beyond begging, borrowing, and stealing, being really creative, developing GoFundMe accounts, posting a social media wish list, posting on Craigslist. In fact, our office in California just recently got 7 laptops, MacBooks donated for their individuals who are at home and don't have a lot of connection to the community. And so this is their way of connecting to the community. Also helping people get connected to understand that there are a lot of free and reduced internet services now. Comcast, for example, you can get free internet service for $10 a month if you have a need and can demonstrate certain things. So checking into how can we tap into other opportunities short of having people go sitting outside of a Starbucks and tapping into their internet. And then helping people understand how to Zoom, because Zoom or Google Chat, Google Meet are all ways that we can connect and work together and make sure that people don't feel lonely and isolated. And it's a way for them to, again, access the internet so that they can start investigating work opportunities and career opportunities. And so this link on the screen is a link that we found very helpful that provides Zoom instruction for individuals that's very easy to understand. The 2 images on this screen, the top image is an elderly parent helping a young man with a disability with his iPad to connect with some individuals that he had been missing. And the screen below is a young woman with her new computer that was just donated. And so she's super excited about being able to connect with the people that she's missing now. Slide 8, please. Okay, so the first thing when we talk about how do we help people in this time, think about careers, think about jobs, think about what are they going to do, we start thinking about what does the person want to learn or do. So we ask the question, what is it that you want to learn or do? And then who can you connect with in the community? I mean, maybe you want to learn some sign language, and then maybe you can take a class, community class on sign language via the internet, and then you can connect with other people who are interested in doing that. One of our colleagues in Maryland is taking ASL classes online, and she is very successful connecting with other people who she is now thinking about other opportunities beyond the grocery store job that she has as an essential worker. Maybe you want to learn how to play the guitar, which is the other image on the screen. Maybe you could do some volunteer work that will connect you to people that will help you think about different career opportunities. And so the other image is a box of food that somebody has packaged. And then the other image on this screen is a young man overlooking San Francisco. That is, and just thinking about the world as your oyster, really thinking about now is your time to disrupt. Now is your time to rethink. And maybe you had a job that you were laid off of. Maybe you didn't have a job at all. And so now is your opportunity to rethink all of those different options that might be available to you. Because again, I don't think COVID is going to go away completely. So we do need to disrupt our thinking and how we continue to support people. On slide 9, these are some of the things that we've done, and I've titled it Support and Services 2020 and Beyond, because again, I feel like some of these things are going to stay, and I think that's okay. So for us, really thinking about career and jobs is really continuing to make sure people are connected, because those soft job skills are still going to be needed, and people are going to need to still have those connections and know how to work with each other. So we've established a lot of different types of Zoom classes. In the very beginning, last March, our California office started Café Quarantine, where we got together and we just talked about how they were feeling and what was happening. And so many of them were laid off. And in San Francisco, the whole city was on lockdown for probably eight months of the pandemic. So we really got people thinking about things. And as a result of that, people who then were called back to work started talking about it and connecting people to other opportunities and letting them know that the business that they were called back to was hiring. So having that connection with people was super important. We did yoga and Zumba classes virtually. We talked about current events so that people felt connected to the world, and what was happening in San Francisco was also happening in Milwaukee. It was also happening in Rockville, Maryland. So they didn't feel like they were so isolated. And then with the current events, they started looking at what are some opportunities for employment? What are some career opportunities that you didn't think about before in the healthcare field, in the food distribution field? So lots of things to discuss as we move out of the pandemic and things started opening up. We also talked about money matters. We helped people understand, how do you apply for unemployment now? How does that impact your Social Security, and how can we work through those things? And then of course, just fun stuff like cultural tours and cooking and nutrition classes together. We did just Zoom get-togethers where people from across the country, so our clients from Milwaukee got together with our clients from California for dinner parties, and they got to meet people that they never would have met before. And then they started talking about, well, you work at this place called Cook's Specialty. What is that? And wow, do we have something like that here in California? So it was a really cool opportunity for people to think differently about what it is that they can do once the things kind of open up and businesses start to open up. We did individual lessons and small classes on, again, ASL. We had music lessons. And then, of course, we did a lot of discovery and job exploration that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then what was really exciting is virtual volunteering. So we have a couple of folks that are doing senior center happy grams. And it started out where their family member would go and they would distribute them to the different nursing homes. And now they're doing Zoom happy grams to the nursing home residents. A couple of our clients did virtual food drives in their neighborhood. Another one got together and they have a homeless shelter near their where they live, and so they started assembling cold weather hygiene kits. So the homeless shelter would bring stuff to his apartment, and then he would assemble cold weather kits. And now he's connected in a different way he had never connected before. So these are just some ideas of things that we could really kind of use those virtual services to help people think outside of what they currently knew before COVID in last March. Slide 10. This is just an example of Café Quarantine. The image is a laptop with the Café Quarantine participants there. And what we did is we had meet and greet Tuesdays. So again, we brought in people from California, from Maryland, from Milwaukee, and they all sort of talked to each other and connected, and they talked about, you know, what are you doing in Milwaukee, and is it cold there? And they never, you know, the weather and all those kinds of things that we sort of take for granted. We started establishing Zoom pals between the CEO and the WorkLink clients that we have in the two different areas. Andrea is one of the clients at WorkLink, so she would do a show and tell because she was really excited about some of the work that she was doing, and some of the virtual reading of materials. She would dress up as characters, and then she would read and then send those videos onto YouTube that could go to childcare and to other people who were around the community. We had Bring Your Pet Day, where they got to talk about their pets and show their pets, whether it was a fish or a bird or a frog or a cat or a dog. Dance Party Wednesdays was one of my favorite. I attended those quite frequently, but that was quite fun. And then we would have just, genre dress up days. So 70s days, 60 days. We had open mic karaoke that I did once and I was never invited back after that. But it's understandable. And then we had a birthday committee where everybody started getting together and talking about birthdays. So Café Quarantine was super popular, a way to connect people, a way to get people to think about what are you doing in terms of jobs, but in terms of just being a human being and connecting with people and talking about jobs and careers. On slide 11, this is just an image. We redesigned Skills to Pay the Bills from the Office of Disability Employment Policy. This is an image of my colleague and I actually having a Zoom Pay the Bills session, because again, it was continually looking at discovery. We did virtual tours of businesses on these sessions, and really looking at soft skills and having them practice those soft skills at home, or if they were walking around the neighborhood, or if they were grocery shopping or in the community. 3 of these people actually ended up getting jobs because of the connections that they made during Skills to Pay the Bills class virtually. Page 11, slide 12, please. Another thing that we did was we really started connecting with businesses and doing virtual informational interviews. So we have our virtual informational interview questions, and then we would go with somebody to the business, but that wasn't possible. And so we started doing virtual informational interviews where we would call a business and say, schedule a time to just interview them. And then we would have a Zoom meeting with them. So the employer would show, a little bit of the business if they could, or they would at least show themselves. And so the image is a young woman looking at a computer screen on a laptop, and she's talking. And then the image next to it is Melody, who is a young woman who did an informational interview. She attended a virtual Skills to Pay the Bills class, talked about all of the different possibilities, and then did an informational interview and was hired after her informational interview at a pet store that, believe it or not, in our area, the pet stores were essential workers. So they remained open during COVID. And so she was super excited. So, the virtual informational interviews were really a good way of still maintaining those connections with individuals and for having them understand what types of businesses that are out there. Virtual job and career fairs. A group that I was working with in Pittsburgh had some virtual job fairs where they would have different businesses, and then they would have breakout rooms within the business. And then they would go and they would move from room to room. And so the breakout rooms were, manufacturing. Another breakout room might be food service or hospitality. Another breakout room might be retail. And then people got to go from room to room to talk about their business and that they were actually hiring in many of these places. Businesses were struggling because I think not only had they been closed for a while, but now they needed to get people back in. And so this was a really great opportunity to connect businesses that people may not have thought about in a virtual way. On slide 13, we also did virtual job shadows and tours. So we connected with some businesses who are pretty savvy with their own technology. And so through FaceTime, we would take a virtual job shadow or tour of a business. We might tack that on with a virtual informational interview, or it was part of our discussions on Skills to Pay the Bills. But there was a virtual factory tour that's coming up actually that we've got out there for our folks. And then it was just a really good way again of connecting with businesses and letting businesses know that we're out there to support them, but having our clients actually see businesses that they probably wouldn't have seen before because we kind of just worked around their little neighborhood. Slide 14. And then finally, we did a couple of virtual community conversations. And this is an actual virtual community conversation that we did that connected a couple of our communities, starting to talk about employment. And then we would, again, use breakout rooms. And so we had individuals with disabilities in each of the breakout rooms. And then the businesses or the community members would talk about opportunities they had, whether it's in a volunteer opportunity or actual career and employment opportunity now or after COVID was over and we could actually leave our homes. Slide 15. So this image is just a group of people walking down a street, and the banners should say easing people back into their communities and the world, because while I think that virtual is always going to be with us and COVID is always going to sort of be that cloud that is there that we just think maybe next time and we'll be more prepared, we still need to think about easing people back into their communities because businesses are going to start to open. And so we need to think about what that's going to look like as well. So on slide 16, we needed to teach new rules. We needed to help our clients understand that there are new norms, new ways of doing things, and teach that COVID safety. The images here are a hand with like cheese flakes from Cheetos. And underneath that is another hand that shows all the different kinds of germs with a microscope. And then of course, a bag of cheese curls. That's how we started teaching people about how germs get transferred. We had them eat the cheese curls, and then they saw all of the stuff all over their hand, and then they would touch the desk or they would touch their, God forbid, but they did touch their computer screen. And they touched their face and so that they could see, oh my gosh, this is what happens. So that's why no hugging, no fist bumps, no high fives. We practiced elbow bumps. We practiced bowing. We practiced all different kinds of ways that we could provide a hello to somebody that we used to do in a different way. We practiced social distancing and help them understand and recognize unsafe situations and what they should do. And we used hula hoops. We got hula hoops. And when we were able to bring 2 or 3 people in, we used hula hoops and said, this is your 6 feet. So you got to stay 6 feet apart. When I was coaching a young woman, Maddie, who was working at Fresh Time, she would take her clipboard, and that's what we told her to do. And so every time I would come in to support her, she would take her clipboard and say 6 feet, 6 feet. So we had to teach that safety in a virtual way so that they could then bring it out into the community, whether that's in the stores or on the bus or in the elevators. And then we did put coronavirus clear and simple video together. That was just helpful for our clients, and the link is here. And it's just a nice tool to help people understand it's scary. We have to take it seriously, but we can all get through this together. Slide 17. And I think I'm going a little over time, so I'll quickly go through this. So we had to prepare people. And so again, as we ease people back into the communities and virtually connect them to different types of businesses and opportunities, we needed to do an individual needs assessment. So, what are their risk factors? Do they live at home? Are the families connecting? So what's missing, that sort of thing. I have to hurry up and move on. All right, so next slide, slide 18. This is something you can take a look at. It's from NASD's. It's a COVID level of proficiency scale, which we used to develop our connections. Next slide, slide 19. So safety was our primary concern. This is an image of a young man who we taught to use his mask at all times. He's working in the community. He was laid off, brought back in. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And then providing that job support. So again, using the PPE, making sure your face mask, goggles, making sure that you are doing what you need to do to maintain that distance. All right, anyway, slide 21. All right, now I will bring this to Sherry Beamer, my colleague, and I'm sorry I went over.
Thank you, Laura. Hello, all. I'm one of your other guest speakers today. I'm Sherry Beamer. I am wearing a red sweater with a headphone and glasses. I'm an adult white female with gray and blonde hair, and I have our SEEC logo in my background. Next slide, please. I'll take just a moment to introduce you to SEEC. We are considered an adult service provider, providing supports to about 300 people. We've been around for just over 30 years. Our tagline is Live, Work, Thrive, and we assist people to live in the home of their own choosing with whom they want to live, paid employment that is valued and meaningful, pursue their personal development through continuous learning, and to thrive in communities of family and friends. And today I'm going to talk about our internship services for transitioned youth, and we do use the project search model for those services. So on to the next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about our lessons learned today, and they're boxed in 3 ideas on the slide, which is slide number 23. That hybrid virtual and in-person learning increased engagement for people and built skills, that this period of time helped us to get even more focused, and we were able to assist people to consider and get into diversified careers, and that there's a pivot to permanent virtual work, not only for the people that we support as employees, but also with the businesses that we're working with. On to the next slide, please, which is 24. So our enhanced career learning looked like building some general knowledge classes. And we're starting to use the word telehealth because much of the funding in our country for adult services comes from the Center for Medicaid Services. They are now approving that we can continue to do virtual supports in the future, and they're naming it telehealth. So our project search model, which most project search models are set up this way, include working with teachers, school districts. So we have staff on board who are teachers. They already had a curriculum that they were providing in person when we were able to provide in-person supports in our internship service. So they just converted those to online classes. And at SEEC in general, we have several staff who are special educators as well. So we built a whole nother body of learning classes that are all online and virtual as well. But there were 2 specific services that we learned about and subscribed to during COVID that assisted us with all this around career development. And one of those is called Virtual Job Shadow. And the website for Virtual Job Shadow is in the picture on the slide, virtualjobshadow.com. And there's a photo of what the selections can look like in that subscription service. Many jobs are previewed through there. There are many different activities, so we could use those for considering jobs and also to participate in discovery activities through the internship program. And then stemskills.org, also the website is on the slide for you as well. We met a very dynamic transition teacher at an APSE conference a few years ago, and he has a great summer STEM skills camp in Virginia that we've come to know, and he needed to put all that online so he could continue offering camp right now. So we are not only investing in that service, but we're also helping to test it. And it's just really opened up a wonderful space for us to think about STEM skills for the people that we support. And Eric has developed many dynamic relationships in our community that we're able to now leverage and access as well because we're partnering with him. Our 4 host businesses for Project Search, for the most part, closed during COVID and continue to be closed except for a few opportunities for people. And those were at the National Institutes of Health, the Smithsonian Museums, the Montgomery College, which is a community college in our county, and also a set of hotels affiliated with the Hilton in downtown District of Columbia. So those had a very particular type of service and business that we were offering opportunities for people within, and now we've really been open and expand that during COVID. On to the next slide, please. So we also saw the opportunity for people to engage and build skills in different ways than they had before. So I have 4 bubbles of what those look like. One is external training and certification programs. So similar to what Laura mentioned, we've had people do the same thing, take advantage of this period of time where they may have more time available to them to think about taking some different training classes that they might not have had time to do before. So we have a lot of people who are taking some form of technology classes because they have an interest and a skill in doing that. And they do see that that's going to be invaluable in the future because we do see many jobs are staying virtual or remote. And we had a number of people who also took some animal care opportunities as well. Work experiences. We have continued to provide in-person supports when we could. So all those good practices that Laura talked about, we have been able to do as well. Some of our host business were able to provide some in-person opportunities. But we met someone along the way, and this is one thing that we've learned through this period of time, that there are many, many volunteers willing to give of their time more easily during this pandemic because they've been able to do it virtually. So we met someone in our community who created a nonprofit called Charity Connect, and that organization exists to assist people to figure out how to volunteer in an intentional way, either for a career or how they want to give to their community. And so she's been able to bring this concept of intentional volunteering to our group to think about how to do that in a different way than they might have before. And then our mock interviews are now virtual, and our job club is now virtual. And those have expanded greatly because of the number and the type of volunteers who have come to us. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide, which is 26. There is a visual on the slide from our mock interviews and also from our job club. And our employer outreach team, along with one of our educators, keeps those going for us and are redesigning it for us in this period of time. And as they say, it's helping the people that we support, our interns who are getting ready for and looking for work, to get inside the employer's head. So we've had many more volunteers and many more job seekers try out doing some virtual mock interviews, which has given the opportunity to do some informational interviewing at the same time. And our job club has tripled in attendance because of that. And we found these phenomenal volunteers, as I mentioned before. And there's some interesting mentorship opportunities that are developing that we weren't really thinking about before. So we probably have a new service and opportunity and model in that we will continue to develop over time. One was a guest speaker who spoke about goals, and he offered his contact information. One of our interns took him up on developing that relationship. They established a quick friendship, and the guest speaker has a relationship with our bank, and he actually developed a virtual remote job for our intern. And he's now in his first month of service, and it's going really well. We had another volunteer who is very interested in thinking about how a variety of people network. And he's interested in doing that through LinkedIn. So we're doing a pilot right now with a graduated intern who wants to use LinkedIn more as a way to connect, and he's helping her through that process. And then we'll be testing out how that works and probably replicating that as well. So on to the next slide, which is 27. I have some stars that speak to the diversified careers that we've been able to get into. When we do employment services, of course, we always want to be looking at this. We want to be looking at what's available in the person that we're supporting's network, community, what's available based on what they're interested in. But during the pandemic, we took a much more focused view on where the industries were that were really needing people and were really growing because of what was happening during the pandemic. So shipping and stocking is one of those. We have someone that we support who loves to stay busy and had a seasonal job at a farm that was new during the pandemic for us as well. He ended up getting connected at UPS in a seasonal job and just got in a customized role taken on permanently, making $17.50 an hour, managing packages in a very particular way because shipping at UPS has grown and that facility is growing as well. So that has been a great win for us. And we've also been able to establish a relationship with them for more jobs in the future. We've gotten more involved in the biotech corridor, which we intended to do in our community since this happened. And that's now unfolding in a way that we will see, we believe, more trade and STEM skill jobs coming forward. Definitely a lot more jobs that take technology and IT experience. We have expanded our technology department at SEEC. Everyone that we support and everyone that works at SEEC now have laptops. So that was a dramatic change. So we were able to hire 2 of our graduated interns to be part of our IT team. And we've also been working with real estate companies who have found different ways that they want to market and document their leads during this time that have opened up opportunities for our interns for contract work. And then we got into a manufacturing lab that is building more jobs that we're able to participate in. Again, for graduating interns, they've been packaging the COVID tests. And then just a wide variety of remote jobs. All of our host businesses I mentioned before have found very unique ways to continue to do their work. And then they have found ways for our interns to participate in that. And one of those would be they need a way to get graduating student certificates out to them. So one of our interns, that is their virtual role, is to work on getting those certificates printed in the mail and ready to go for the college, and doing that remotely, not at the college's location. On to the next slide, which is slide number 28. So because our host businesses were not able to provide the number of work experiences that we had before, we branched out in our community and looked for more work sampling and externship opportunities, which means outside of these host businesses. So similar to those categories I mentioned before, we have had 4 jobs now in science labs and manufacturing, with 2 more pending. In IT and tech support, we've been able to get 2 jobs and some more STEM career training, which is coming through STEM Skills, the group I mentioned before. And then virtual data entry and virtual assistants, 2 jobs so far, and 5 internships have been developed so far. And then on to the final slide for my section number 29. This is helping us achieve better results and goals. So I have a graph here that shows our employment numbers since the pandemic has started. This also includes data from our employment services department, but our internship department folds in together with that as people are moving through their internship process. So in general, you know, we've been getting maybe 4 to 6 jobs a month for people. Things started slowing down in the pandemic. As you can see, January to March in 2020, we were just at about 4 jobs. Then April to June, down to 1 job. Then July to September, up to 7 jobs. October to December, up to 10 jobs. And here we are in the first quarter of 2021, still uncertain with what's going on, but already we've got 4 new jobs that are happening. So we're excited about the future. And I will turn you over now to Brianna.
Hi, everybody. My name's Brianna Schultz. I'm the Internship and Employment Coordinator for Inclusive U at Syracuse University. I am a white woman with brown hair. I'm wearing a light blue sweater and sitting in front of a background that shows some important places from the university, along with a landscaping of the university. Slide 31, please. So I just wanted to start off with a little bit of background on what is inclusive higher education. So inclusive higher education is the incorporation of students with disabilities into general academic courses on campuses across all disciplines and departments with traditionally matriculated students on campus. So there's a variety of different program models across the country. A majority of them have started through TIPSID grants, which are transition and post-secondary programs for students with intellectual disabilities, and these are given through the federal government in 5-year increments. There's 300 programs nationwide, so there are many iterations of inclusive higher education programs at various universities, and Inclusive U is one of them. The picture on this slide is a group of students at a football game. They are traditional students and Inclusive U students, just enjoying the game. Slide 31 or 32, please. This is just a map of post-secondary education programs for students with IDD by state. So if you're interested, this graphic came from thinkcollege.net, and it just shows the number of programs across the country. So if you're interested in checking them out for yourself, this is the place to go. Next slide, please. Slide 33 describes who we are. What is the Lawrence B. Tayshoff Center for Inclusive Higher Education? We're committed to increasing opportunities in higher education for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. This includes academic work. Our students take traditional classes in our course catalog. They audit their courses. They leave here with a certificate in a major that they have chosen, and they also leave with work experience to help strengthen that certificate and find better employment in the community. Our program is a 4-year program. Our students typically spend 4 years, but some may spend more, some may spend less. We have residential options and commuter options for students, but our goal is employment. The purpose of students entering our program is to leave here to find a job, to find a career, and build a life in the community that they are driving themselves. The photo on this slide is one of our students who is a graduate of our program. This is Cleo. He graduated in 2020. He was a Remembrance Scholar and involved in many, many organizations at the university. Slide 34, please. So to give you a better idea of who we are as a program and what this typically looks like, this is our Inclusive U video that describes our program. This tracks 3 of our students who graduated in 2020 to give you a better idea of what they did during their time here, and then I can better explain the changes we made due to the pandemic. So if you could please play the video.
Every student deserves the opportunity to have the college experience to help them achieve their dreams. Inclusive U is an opportunity for students with intellectual disability to have a full college experience. So students earn a meaningful certificate from Syracuse University. Students declare a major. They participate in fully inclusive coursework. They can participate in college internships in real business opportunities. Students can participate in clubs and organizations. Students can live in residence halls. Our students have lots of peer opportunities and participate in attending athletic events.
My favorite things about SU was everything was my favorite. Like being able to be with my friends, doing all these opportunities that I didn't think I was gonna do.
I love SU because it's fun, especially my favorite mascot, Otto.
Tyler Dio, Good for you, 2020. Go Cuse. Let's go our house.
I think the first time I met Harry was when he came in for orientation. He was a student who, just getting from one room to another, could easily get lost or confused. Harry became this student over 4 years who lived independently in the dorms. He became this student who could navigate campus on his own. When he walks across campus, he knows everyone. He is just a star.
This little kid, we love basketball a lot.
Harry started working with the men's basketball team as one of the student managers. Harry has always had this love of sports and athletics, and it fit right in with his career goals and also with his major. I think was something that was really just a dream come true for him.
Basketball manager. And coming out Saturday, my boys are awesome.
And then his senior year, Harry participated in our senior internships. We know that for many of our students, getting a job after graduation is a really important goal for them. And it's an important goal for most college students. The internship year is something that we think is a really important part of our Inclusive U programming, that we help support students in choosing something that is tied to their career interests and is related to their major. All of these pieces really tie together for a student like Harry because he took courses in his major area of study, and so his major was exercise science. He worked with the men's basketball team throughout his college career, and he also did his internships in both the Barnes Center and the Manley Fieldhouse. So those internships really tied into what his career goals are. Often our students go to classes with a peer mentor that can help them with their schoolwork, who can help them organize their materials, help them participate in class, help them participate in group work, help them with their homework. Students can bring a mentor, or students can work with us to hire an SU student to be a peer mentor. We set up from the very beginning a peer-to-peer program. It's really expanded the social opportunities for students and really given them that extra first step in how to get involved. We're really proud of our program and how much it's grown in the last few years. 3 years ago, we had our first student who lived in the residence hall, and that was Megan.
When I started as a freshman at Inclusive U, I was very shy and I didn't really know anybody. I was the first person to live in the dorms.
We work with the Inclusive U students to figure out what kinds of supports they might need. Residential mentors are SU students who live in the residence halls and get matched up with our students based on their needs.
It was just really hard for me because I guess I wasn't used to living away from home, but then I got really used to it after a while, and I stayed in the dorm, and I met a lot of nice people and everything who let me be who I am. Harry lived downstairs too, so we all hung out together all the time.
To see her graduating from Syracuse University and about to move into her own apartment, I'm just really proud. Cleo was our first Remembrance Scholar from Inclusive U. The Remembrance Scholarship is the highest honor at Syracuse University. And to have a Remembrance Scholar as an Inclusive U student is something that we actually didn't know could ever happen. I'm really proud to be part of Syracuse University because of their inclusive stance.
It makes me feel good because they know I've been supporting this college community here at Syracuse University because they know I've been attending every event. My student organization campus involvement I was part of was Relay for Life. I was a recruitment chair. My sophomore year, I joined Sport Management Club, a student association I'm also part of. I liked it so I could show my leadership.
No dream is too big. Just because somebody told you that you couldn't do these things, or just because you were nervous or scared, doesn't mean that you can't go out and do these big things in your life. Because these three prove that it's possible, and you can do it too. This is a college campus where students with disabilities are really part of the full college experience.
I'll say I changed because I'm a grown-up person.
You can do anything that you want to do.
I love SEEC. This is my life right now.
Awesome, thank you. Slide 35, please. So it's hard to talk about our work without talking about our students. So, which is why I think that video is so important to connect you with the people that we are working with. So I wanted to jump into a day in the life of an Inclusive U intern. Our internship program is the last year, typically, of a student's time at Syracuse University. Students dedicate their full senior year to interning and working on campus. So our students start off with a 9 o'clock employment skills class. They then work on campus from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at an internship that's been individualized for them, depending on their major and their career goal. At 2 o'clock, typically in pre-pandemic times, we had an in-person check-in at the end of the day. During these COVID times, this has turned into a virtual check-in. At 3 o'clock, students might meet with a mentor, meet with friends. I'll talk a little bit about what things look like on our campus in a minute. And then at 5 o'clock, we still have students attending classes. So one of our students attends an entrepreneurship class, another student attends sports media classes, and then various seminars that go on around campus. Slide 36, please. So the COVID-19 pandemic and inclusive higher education programs. March 2020 was a very difficult time for all of us. We were forced into this virtual world with about a week planning. These programs were operating in person. We had regular daily in-person check-ins with students. We were on their internship sites. We were doing so many things in person. So March 2020, we had to transition everything to virtual internships, virtual career training, and other opportunities. Some internships we were able to pull online and make completely virtual, such as our SoundBeat internship, which is a podcasting internship. Other things like Harry, who you saw in the video, he was working in facilities management at our Manley Fieldhouse, which is our sports complex. We had to find something different for him. So this was a lot of problem solving and work through various departments on campus to help identify new opportunities for students. We had them create interest groups where they were, as part of their internship, where they had to plan content and present to their peers. So not only were they learning skills on how to teach and talk to their peers, but they were also organizing and kind of working through almost a teaching type of lesson plan. While this may not have touched on many of their career goals, we figured they were learning great transferable skills that they could use in interviews and continue to talk to people who are just going to engage them and give them that social interaction that was much needed. Our Inclusive U program also started a bunch of seminars where we were filling the time between classes that students would usually spend going to the gym, meeting up with friends, going to lunch. We filled these blocks between classes with various opportunities for people to engage and talk to each other and just try and work through this weird time that we were going through. Syracuse University was also one of the first universities in the country to say that we are coming back in the fall of 2020 in person. So we spent much of June to August engaging families, students, and newly graduated students through those various transitions. We had a group of students who had their internships cut short, so we were challenged with the task to transition them to job development and try and figure out what that job was going to be. For many students, we started looking into these essential working fields. We had students gain jobs in FedEx, in mail rooms, food services, childcare, and then one student jumped on to this podcasting company and started to work in creating episodes for them. We continued to either hold webinars with families to ask questions. We wanted to walk them through this transition process. We were figuring it out step by step, but we really tried to engage and communicate to families regularly so they did not feel left behind. I think this was part of our success, was just making sure that we communicated to the student, the graduating student, that we were there with them, even though we were all figuring this out together. During the summer, we were also planning for this in-person hybrid semester. We were challenged to bring people back safely with COVID testing, with social distancing, and with masking protocols. So we had to plan internship options and employment class options with all of this in mind. Our typical room space, which you saw in the video, which was a 8-person conference room that could be fairly crammed, we had to find a space for 12 students who could be socially distant in a room together. We started utilizing Zoom at the same time as we were teaching. So while we had an in-person instructor with some students in the classroom, some students were also attending on Zoom online from a different location. While this was not ideal, it opened up a lot of options for students who maybe were quarantined, who didn't feel well, who decided to stay home, or students who were doing their internship virtually from another location. So from August 2020 to now, we're still working along with these safe in-person learning options. We also had to adapt our internship sites. We had about 40 departments on campus we were working with, and once COVID hit and everybody was working through the restrictions that were given to us, that site number dropped to 6. So we had to work with the departments that we did have that wanted students to do these work skills, and we worked through a job analysis form with them to really identify how they could work with our students, and the students could gain really solid work experience during their time here at the university. Slide 37, please. So we had to think about creative options in career training. One of the great things about being a TIPSID program is the access we had to the Think College network. I am involved with a few different things within Think College, and was talking to a few of the employment coordinators from various programs across the country. We were all going through the same thing. We all didn't know what to do, but we all realized that we were the only person doing employment at our university in this capacity. So the idea for the Think College Employment Affinity Group was born. And this is just a group of professionals in the inclusive higher education community that are sharing ideas and strategies to best evolve this work. I think this was a really important takeaway from this time, was that just pulling together the people in your community that are doing the same thing to try and share ideas. Laura said, beg, borrow, and steal ideas, and that's exactly what we're doing in this group. We're just all trying to move our programs along and give students the opportunities that they want to be successful later on down the road. Virtual everything, we turned everything virtual. Mock interviews, trainings, our curriculum, and its increased inclusion and individualization. We've been able to do some really cool things on Zoom to involve students who may have had a difficult time in the classroom accessing materials or keeping up with the pace of class. We've now recorded every session that we do on our employment skills class, so students are able to refer back to material. They can see what we said. They can engage with the content much easier than if it was strictly in person. So virtual everything has really helped us, and will also be a piece that I think will continue down the road. And one unique thing about Inclusive U at Syracuse University is we are trying to approach education from an inclusive standpoint. So using university systems in everything we do. And during the time of the pandemic, managing technology and building networks for our students has been the best thing that we've been able to do. We've used the systems such as Blackboard and Zoom and some of the other technologies available at the university to just integrate with the classes, to integrate with material being taught. And it's really helped to move our program along and create successful outcomes. Slide 38, please. So how do we see inclusive higher education programs being affected in the future because of COVID-19? I think we're all going to walk away from this with lessons learned and also changes that have been for the better. I have seen between the spring 2020 class of interns and the fall 2020 class of interns increased expectations of our students to be able to navigate technology and web-based platforms. It was expected of our new class of interns when they came in fall 2020 that they had a pretty good handling on using Zoom and being somewhat proficient in email and responding to things regularly. I think this will only continue to grow. And I think that employment training will be focused heavily on computer literacy for all students in some capacity. I also see after the pandemic over, increased opportunities to access in-person material through virtual platforms or learning management system. Speakers have been great in accessing some material that has been offered all over the place because of Zoom. So I see a lot of these things continuing, and I see a lot of inclusivity in just allowing people to get material much easier than maybe pre-COVID. Slide 39, please. And that is all I have. Thank you. Any questions?
We have several questions in queue, so maybe we can go through those, but I want to take a moment to thank all of our panelists, talk about just some great content, new ideas and strategies that were shared, and I hope I reflect the general audience's reactions. This just was an extremely rich panel. I'm going to just go through some of the questions that we have, and we actually have queued up quite a few. So I'm going to start with Laura. There was a question, a couple of clarifying questions from your presentation. Folks wanted to know how the virtual food drive works, and also what's the difference between work sampling versus an externship?
Okay, so the virtual food drive, what we did is we helped him connect with Hunger Task Force in Milwaukee, and they actually helped him connect. They had a virtual component to what they were doing. And so what he did is then in his neighborhood, he distributed flyers with a mask on, put it in people's mailboxes, got people to email him saying that he was interested in, that they were interested in being part of the food drive, and then had his list of people in his neighborhood. He didn't have like a neighborhood group that had a listserv of any type. So he went around door to door and said he was doing this food drive virtually. So he then sent it out to people and they responded. And what they did is, the way the Hunger Task Force did it is, like, people could purchase, like, 5 cans of string beans, or they could do a meal for 4. And I think he generated like $3,000 worth of food for people in his community. So it was kind of cool. So we connected him directly with the food bank that is in our neighborhood. I think the work sampling and externship might have been Sherry's. I'm not 100% sure because I don't remember talking about externships. Was that yours, Sherry?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, apologies about that.
Okay. That's great.
Sorry. Yeah, go right ahead, Sherry.
Thank you. So our typical internship program based at the host businesses finds the interns working their way through 3 rotations of opportunities at the host sites. So those were, for the most part, no longer available. And we've set up those relationships with those host businesses to meet Department of Labor internship standards. And we have documents that are signed off on by administrators on both ends to make sure that it's clear that's how it's working and it's part of the Project Search national standard. And we've been working with Project Search on all these amendments as well. So that was no longer available. So an externship is a shorter internship. And so when we found those arrangements with other businesses, we created a letter of understanding that matched the larger memo of understanding that we have with our host businesses that would cover those situations. So for instance, we had a lab that provided cancer treatment, but they were also doing experiments on animals. And so we had someone who did some animal care interning there. And so that fell under our relationship with the National Institutes of Health. And by the way, he did get hired by them. And a work sampling is where you might just go observe or actually do a little bit of work at a business, but for a much shorter period of time and much less of a commitment. But the same thing, we still had it fall under the leadership of our host businesses.
Great, thank you so much, Sherry. We have a question that I think has to do with kind of confidentiality. So there's a participant that works with adults with disabilities to help find them jobs and is asking if they were going to do virtual job shadows and have speakers involved, would they need to get permission from each person to have them in the Zoom trainings together? Any thoughts from our panelists on that?
We didn't do anything special at SEEC. We have some standards and some agreements as people come into the service, what that's going to look like. But it was a very natural environment, just as if, you know, we were meeting someone new in community that we were trying to connect with. So we did not do any of that, and we haven't had any problems with that. We do have a family member who works in cybersecurity, so we just made sure that we were following good secure practices. If you've been using Zoom, you'll see examples of that where, you know, people have been breaking into Zoom in the early days of its use, and so it's more passworded and controlled. So we've gotten knowledgeable about those sorts of things and make sure that doesn't happen and have strategies in place in case someone would show up in those groups and not be known to us.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, it's kind of the same. We didn't videotape it or record it. So it's the same as if you'd walk into a business and everybody knew they were on Zoom because they were invited to Zoom. And then we made sure that everybody had a separate passcode or we put them in the waiting room. And so then we allowed them to come in. So it's not like it was open access to anybody. So we were very careful about that. So we didn't need any kind of special permission.
Okay, great, thank you. So I have several questions that apply, I think, to Brianna, but of course, any panelist is welcome to jump in. There were some questions regarding podcasting internships, and it would like some more details about those. So let's start with that one.
So we had a student in our Soundbeat podcasting internship, and what that student did was there was a topic for an episode that they would identify. So maybe it was on a book, it was on a piece of artwork, and that student would do the research on the background of what that topic is. They would look into who may have produced the artwork, background on that person, the inspiration behind it, and then after he did the writing for this, he would turn it over to the person actually producing the podcast, and they would work on creating a script. So he did a lot of that episode creation and not so much of the recording.
Okay, great. Another question that came up is, how do most students that are attending Inclusive U fund their tuition and housing?
Great question. So I can send our website that actually breaks down more of the cost, but our students either pay through private pay or students have what's called a self-direction budget in New York State. And the tuition and fees for classes falls under the self-direction budget. For housing, students and families are responsible for that. So it's kind of a mashed up option of paying for housing. But most students pay for classes through their Medicaid budget under self-direction.
Okay, great. Another question for, I think, anybody who wants to answer it is whether virtual training is beneficial for those who are autistic.
So at SEEC, a good number of people that we support do have autism, and it's been a great experience so far. The gentleman with the UPS job has autism. The gentleman who got the job at the bank has autism. So there's something I think, you know, it's been, we've been able to individualize for them with these different ways we've been providing support, and you know, because people can come in and out of what they're doing. Not that that would be any different than what we would do live, but it's actually been working very well for people. We haven't seen any issues or problems different than what we may provide in our usual supports in supporting people who may have autism.
I would say the same thing, echoing Sherry. We individualized everything for our students. So we adapted what students needed as far as curriculum, internships, and it's been pretty successful.
I would ditto. When we did our Zoom virtual Skills to Pay the Bills, 4 of the participants had autism, and they loved it. They thought it was great. So we didn't have any issues with it at all.
Well, that kind of consensus response is a welcome one for sure. I think the last question we have in queue so far, or actually I think we've got a couple now. One is whether it says, are you sharing out your virtual skills to pay the bills? I think that was Laura mentioning that. And how was it modified for online participation?
Yeah, I'm happy to, yeah, we worked really hard on it. So I'm happy to share it. We incorporated lots of YouTube videos that enhance the content. We did polling, we used Kahoot. So yeah, I would be happy to share it. We did all the modules, so they're all separate. So Serena, I guess maybe I could think about working with you on figuring out how to get that together. But yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Oh, okay. So she'll email me. Perfect. Okay. Yes, please email me. Yeah.
Perfect.
And I can
and we have a few other ones. A participant is asking Brianna, did the university provide students technology to participate in virtual activities?
So upon students' entry into Inclusive U, they're all given an iPad. So most students had their iPad that was working. Some students bought laptops, but if they did not have technology to access their classes, or if, say, the iPad or the internet at home wasn't working, we worked with students individually to help find solutions to those, whether it was renting a laptop from the university or figuring out internet options with their care managers or families. We did that.
Okay, great. Another participant asked, do you think there's a generational gap for those using virtual learning right now? And if so, how do you bridge that gap?
At SEEC, I think that's one of our great joys and surprises that I kind of alluded to in our lessons learned is we did not expect people of all ages and all needs that we support to do as well in virtual supports, their families included. So it's, you know, it's opened up this whole nother world for people to be part of community, to find work, to find what they're interested in. It's been phenomenal for us.
Yeah, I have to agree. You know, a lot of our families in San Francisco and Milwaukee are older family members. And so it was kind of fun to watch the individuals teach their family members how to do things. And then our older, more veteran, mature clients really embraced technology. So we didn't really see any major issues with that.
A nice surprise. Well, that is the end of the questions in queue. I do want to, oh, I've got another one in there. Good. We've got about 7 minutes left. So definitely want to encourage folks to get some additional questions in. So one of our participants is asking, are there any negatives to the virtual side of things?
I can give you our experience, but during our hybrid classes, some students were taking classes in a public space with their masks off. So to try and enforce safety rules over Zoom was pretty difficult. Also with students accessing a 9 a.m. class, a lot of them were doing it in bed after they just woke up 2 minutes ago. So just trying to reinforce those skills on good dress, hygiene. In the beginning, that was really, really difficult for us. It seems to have gotten better after a year has passed of doing this, but we still have some difficulty with that.
We had the same at SEEC, but we just had to all learn different ways to work together. Our staff did the same thing. So we created some tools and processes for ourselves around facilitating virtual supports and participating in virtual supports, because they are really different norms that we're talking about. Today is an example, some of us have background, so you can't see what's behind us, or what's on my wall doesn't distract you in learning. So every step along the way, we've been learning. It's a learning spike, I think, not a learning curve this year.
Yeah, I think the only negative to virtual is that everybody wants to be back face to face. I mean, it is hard to see people in 3 dimensions, and it can be very distracting to have to sit there at your computer when you want to get up and walk around and do things. But and I agree with Brianna. That's why we started with the hula hoop thing with the 6 feet, because people forgot that you got to stay 6 feet apart and you have to wear your mask all the time, and it's not a chin strap. It actually needs to go across your whole face and nose. So that's why we put together also the COVID video too, to get people to really understand this is serious.
Okay, we have a couple more rolling in. How do I find out about inclusive higher education in the state of Michigan? Any thoughts about that?
I would highly recommend going to thinkcollege.net. There you can access a ton of information about inclusive higher ed programs, and you can also look at what programs are in the state of Michigan. Also, Micah Fialka-Feldman, who is in Intelligent Lives, is also from the state of Michigan and moved to Syracuse. So if interested, I can connect you with him. He's got a lot of great things to say about Michigan, but he's also just somebody awesome to connect with. So thinkcollege.net would be your first place to start.
Great recommendation. We do a lot of collaborating with them. Another question is, how accessible was Kahoot for students with cognitive disabilities, as well as students who are blind and visually impaired or deaf and hard of hearing?
Sorry, I'm on mute. So Kahoot was actually pretty easy for students with intellectual disabilities. They were able to figure it out really pretty easily as we walked through it. Now we had to do training in advance. So it wasn't like we just said, okay, click on Kahoot. Like we had to walk them through in advance, to put it on their iPhone or put on their computer. For our folks who were visually impaired or had visual differences, it really, it's not as accessible as I'd like it to be. And I've actually written to them. So I would read the questions. I turned off the volume, so that noise, the music that they have, I didn't include that. So you could see the words, you could see the questions, and you could hear my reading of it. So it's not as 100% accessible for people with sensory issues, but for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, we did not have any problem with it.
Okay, I'm going to end with a final great question. We have just a couple of minutes, so if you can keep your responses short, but it would be great if each of you could respond. How do you see virtual learning being an accessible tool in the post-COVID-19 world?
At SEEC, we are most definitely going to build it into our ongoing services now, especially since it's approved through the Center for Medicaid Services and the state of Maryland. It's part of my next task is to re-envision our services and build it in. I think it's going to give us a great opportunity to learn in a group and then go out and do what we need to do individually for ourselves with the people we support.
Go ahead, Laura.
I echo what Sherry said. I think it is going to be a part of the services that we provide. We have several people who have difficulty leaving their homes just because they don't like leaving their homes. So it's a way to get them connected and then move them into the community. So I don't think it's going to be 100%, but I think it will definitely be something we're going to continue using for a variety of reasons, getting people together and then bringing them back into the community and trying different things, tours of businesses they might not think about, that kind of thing.
I think for us, this is something we'll definitely build into the curriculum for students who miss class because they're sick or have to take a longer leave of absence for any reason. I think having this information accessible and something to refer back to is super important. I also think that virtual learning is just going to carry over into the job market as well. So for our students to be better prepped, to be able to access technology and know how to use it, I think it's something that we'll continue to build on and grow with.
Great. We are right at 4:30. I want to thank our esteemed speakers once again for just opening our eyes to bigger and brighter ideas. If you liked this webinar, it's the first one of a 3-part series. We will be hosting 2 additional ones looking at various solutions in the virtual realm that we live in. To support your youth and young adult transition from school to work activities. And our next one is March 24th from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration will be open early next week, so be looking out for an email about it. And you'll all receive a survey within the next hour and a couple of reminders over the next week. We really do want to encourage you to take a few minutes. We do look at all the survey responses, and it definitely helps us and informs our work as we continue on our 5th and final year in 2021. Thank you all so much for participating in today's webinar. Thank you again to our wonderful panelists, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Thanks again.